with over 610,000 active personnel and an additional 350,000 reservists. Iran's military might is no longer a secret. It's about to become the talk of the town, and not in a good way for the West. For years, the world has dismissed Iran's armed forces as a paper tiger, relying on outdated equipment and limited capabilities. But in 2024, that perception is changing. So, what exactly has changed, and why should the world be paying closer attention to Iran's military might? To understand the true scope of Iran's military power in 2024, we need to take a step back and look at the country's military history. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran has been on a relentless quest to build up its armed forces and develop the capabilities to defend itself against external threats. The Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s was a formative experience for the Iranian military. Faced with well-equipped Iraqi force, backed by Western support, Iran had to adapt and innovate. They kind of realized that if they wanted to survive, they needed to get creative. So you can say that war was actually a turning point. Iranian military learned how to integrate their conventional forces with the IRGC and foreign proxy groups. Over the years, Iran has continued to invest heavily in its military. They started developing asymmetric warfare capabilities. The result is a military that is more agile, adaptable, and capable than ever before. Let me put it simply, Iran's military in 2024 is a force to be reckoned with. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, they've got a whopping 610,000 active personnel in its armed forces, with an additional 350,000 reservists. Of course, the most impressive thing in their arsenal is ballistic missiles and drones. These guys have been working overtime to develop a striking array of short, medium, and long-range missiles. We're talking about weapons that can reach as far as Europe and the United States. The country has also developed a diverse fleet of unmanned aerial vehicles that can do everything from reconnaissance to precision strikes. These drones have already been used to a great effect by Iran and its proxies in the region, and their spread has become a growing concern for Western powers. Of course, Iran also has an arsenal of more traditional weaponry like tanks, armored personnel carriers, and combat aircraft. Sure, they might not be as shiny and new as the stuff the Americans or the Israelis have, but they get the job done. Iran boasts a large and well-trained armed forces, including the regular military and the IRGC. The IRGC, in particular, has emerged as a powerful and influential force with its own air, land, and naval components, as well as a growing presence in the cyber domain. So what are the driving forces behind Iran's military expansion? Of course, these guys aren't just building up their arsenal for the fun of it. To understand this, we need to look at the country's strategic objectives and the role that its armed forces play in achieving them. At the heart of Iran's military strategy is a simple yet lofty goal: the desire to become a dominant regional power and to counter the influence of the United States and its allies in the Middle East. I think they want to be the ones calling the shots, not the other way around. One of Iran's key strategic goals is to develop the capability to strike at its adversaries, both near and far, in the event of a conflict. This is where the country's ballistic missile and drone programs come into play. At the same time, Iran is also focused to cultivate a network of regional proxies and allies that can help them achieve their goals. We're talking about groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various Shia militias in Iraq. These proxies serve as a force multiplier for Iran, allowing them to extend their influence beyond their own borders. Ultimately, Iran's military ambitions are driven by a desire to assert its dominance in the region and to deter foreign intervention in its affairs. And I think as the country continues to invest in its armed forces and develop new tech, this ambition is only likely to grow in the years to come. I mean, there are already a lot of developments in Iran's growing military cooperation. They have been supplying Russia with some of its most advanced drones and missiles, and in return, they've been getting their hands on some of Russia's latest military tech. It's like a good old-fashioned game of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, but with the potential to shake up the global balance of power. Just imagine it, Iranian drones and missiles combined with Russian know-how and resources. It's a match made in military heaven. And it's got the West sweating bullets. I mean, can you imagine the kind of havoc these two could wreak if they really put their minds to it? Okay, apart from the hardware, Iran has also been investing heavily in its cyber warfare capabilities, with the IRGC's Cyber Command playing an increasingly prominent role in the country's defense strategy. Just as the Israelis, they've been on the receiving end of some pretty nasty cyber attacks in the recent years, and they know better than to underestimate Iran's digital prowess. Overall, these recent developments have significantly bolstered Iran's military might, giving the country a greater ability to project power and threaten its adversaries. And as the world watches with growing unease, the question remains: how will the West respond to this sleeping giant that has finally awakened? We will get to this in a minute. Okay, so when it comes to a military might, how does Iran stack up against the Western powers? On paper, the US and its allies still hold a major advantage when it comes to raw military power. Just look at the numbers. The US has over 1.3 million active personnel, compared to Iran's measly 610,000. And don't even get me started on the hardware. The Americans have got everything from state-of-the-art fighter jets to aircraft carriers that could swallow Iran's entire navy. However, my point is, Iran has been working hard to narrow this gap, focusing on the development of asymmetric warfare capabilities that can offset the West's technological superiority. Its ballistic missile program, in particular, has become a major source of concern for US and Israeli military planners, who recognize the potential threat these weapons pose to their forces and critical infrastructure. Interestingly, Iran's ability to project power through its network of regional proxies and allies gives it a unique advantage in the Middle East. So while the US and its allies may have the upper hand in a conventional military confrontation, Iran's ability to wage a protracted asymmetric conflict could make it a formidable adversary. Eventually, the comparison between Iran's military and the Western powers is a complex and nuanced one. Yes, the West may still hold the edge in terms of raw military might, but Iran's strategic adaptability and its willingness to take risks could make it a more unpredictable and dangerous foe than many might expect. And with their growing cooperation with Russia and other revisionists' power, the potential of Iran to disrupt the global balance of power is only going to increase in the years to come. Okay, let me get back to the main question for today. Should the West be worried about Iran's military might? At the regional level, Iran's growing influence and military power have already contributed to the heightened tensions in the Middle East, and the potential for further escalation is very real. Not gonna lie, just look at what's been happening in places like Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Iran has been busy flexing its muscles, supporting proxy groups, and meddling in the affairs of its neighbors. As I said earlier, Iran's ballistic missile and drone programs are threatening the security of US allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia. Can you imagine the kind of havoc an Iranian missile or drone could wreak on a major city or a critical piece of infrastructure? It's enough to make your skin crawl. Apart from the Middle East, the country's growing cooperation with Russia, for example, has raised concerns about the potential for Iran to provide advanced weapons and technology to support Moscow's global ambitions. I think this could have far-reaching consequences, potentially destabilizing other regions and contributing to the erosion of the international order. So, should the West be worried? You bet your sweet BP they should. On a personal note, I think Iran's military might is no joke, and it's only going to continue to grow in the years to come. These guys have got the hardware, the strategic know-how, and the willingness to take risks that could make them a serious thorn in the side of the West. However, there is still time for the West to get its act together and come up with a coherent strategy to deal with the Iranian threat. Maybe they could try diplomacy for a change, instead of just relying on the old bomb first, ask questions later approach. Or maybe they could try to work with Iran on some common interests like combating terrorism or promoting regional stability. At the end of the day, it's going to take a lot of hard work and a little bit of creativity to keep Iran in check. But if the West can rise to the challenge, who knows, maybe we can all live happily ever after, without having to worry about any missiles raining down on our heads. And that's a wrap for today's video. So what do you think? Are you as fascinated by all of this as I am? Do you think the West has what it takes to keep Iran in check? Or are we all just doomed to live under the shadow of Iranian missiles and drones for the foreseeable future? Drop your comments below. And if you found this video useful, please like it and make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on our next videos. And as always, thank you for watching.